Alton Bus Incident. On September 21, 1989, students in Alton, Texas boarded their school bus in the morning. It was a regular day, junior and senior high school students heading to class. 81 students were on board. The bus traveled along Highway 336. The driver was familiar with the route. A few moments later, something tragic happened. At an intersection, a Dr. Pepper delivery truck approached from another direction. The truck driver was supposed to stop, but he didn't stop. Suddenly, the truck slammed into the side of the bus at full speed. The impact was massive. Metal crunched. Glass exploded. Students were thrown from their seats. The bus veered off the road. It plunged into a water-filled caliche pit and began sinking immediately. Students were disoriented from the crash. They tried finding exits, but they couldn't find any because bodies were pressed together, blocking the exits. Within minutes, the water was already over their heads. The students held their breath. They tried swimming toward the windows, but many couldn't break through. Others got trapped by seat frames and metal debris. Some students near the exits made it out. They surfaced gasping and watched in horror as the bus sank deeper. Rescuers arrived and dove into the murky water. They pulled students out one by one. Some were conscious. Most weren't. 21 students were recorded dead from the incident. Dead Sea Tragedy. On October 25, 2018, school children from Jordan arrived at Zarqa Mayan near the Dead Sea for an educational trip. It was a popular spot. Hot springs, beautiful gorges, and rocky passages perfect for photos. The morning was sunny and warm. Students explored the area. They took pictures and walked through narrow wadis. These were dry riverbeds carved through rock. But the students didn't know that wadis can become death traps in minutes. Around midday, students were posing for group photos in a narrow gorge. Teachers supervised. Everyone was relaxed, happy. Then someone heard a noise, a sound like distant thunder. Within minutes, it grew louder. Then a wall of brown water came roaring through the gorge. It was a flash flood moving at incredible speed. It was 6 feet high, carrying debris, rocks, branches, everything in its path. Students screamed and tried running, but there was nowhere to go. The gorge walls were too steep. The water was too fast. It hit them like a truck. They were swept off their feet. Teachers grabbed at children, but the current was too strong. Bodies tumbled in the churning water. Some clung to rocks. Others were carried downstream. The water kept coming, wave after wave, brown and violent. Students who'd grabbed onto something watched their friends disappear in the current. Some students managed to climb higher on the rocks. Others weren't fast enough. The flood swept them into wider channels, bashed them against boulders, pulled them under. Rescue teams arrived, but the flood was still raging. They couldn't reach everyone. They watched helplessly as students were carried away. Parents arrived at the scene. The sounds of mothers crying mixed with rushing water. When the flood finally subsided, rescuers found bodies scattered along the wadi. Some were miles from where they started. Others were buried in mud and debris. 21 people died. Most were school children, killed by water that came from storms they never saw. A sunny day turned into a nightmare in seconds. Parktown Boys Tragedy. On January 15, 2020, grade 8 students from Parktown Boys High School in South Africa arrived at Nyanga Bush and Riverbreak Lodge for orientation camp. It was supposed to build teamwork and help new students bond. The camp was near the Crocodile River. One of the activities required students to build rafts and cross the river. The students were excited. It felt adventurous, like something from a movie, until it became something else. 13-year-old Enoch Mpianzi was among them. He helped build a raft with his group. They tied logs together and tested the ropes. Teachers and camp staff supervised them. The river looked calm. Brown water moved slowly. Students didn't know the current was stronger than it appeared. The groups pushed their rafts into the water. Some rafts were more stable than others. Enoch's raft looked wobbly, but they launched anyway. The raft made it a few meters from shore. Then it started tipping. Students tried balancing, but the raft flipped. At that moment, they fell into the brown water. Most of them surfaced quickly, grabbed onto logs and started swimming. Teachers on the bank shouted instructions, but Enoch didn't surface. Students looked around for him, called his name. Nothing. The water was too dark to see below the surface. They started searching. Students on the bank watched in growing panic. Where was Enoch? Rescue efforts began, but they were slow. The camp didn't have proper emergency procedures. No lifeguards, no immediate rescue equipment. Minutes passed, then an hour. Other students were pulled from the water, but not Enoch. His classmates stood on the bank wrapped in towels, shivering, crying. They'd just watched their friend disappear. The next day, his body was found, downstream. He'd drowned. He wasn't wearing a life jacket. Kerala Bus Incident. On October 5, 2022, students from Kerala, India boarded a private tourist bus for a school outing. It was late evening. Most students were tired from the day's activities. Some slept in their seats. Others talked quietly. The bus traveled along a highway heading home. The driver was going fast, much faster than safe. He was trying to overtake another vehicle. Ahead was a state transport bus, but the driver didn't see it until it was too late. He slammed on the brakes. The bus skidded, but the speed was too high. The tourist bus crashed into the state bus at high speed. The impact was catastrophic. The front of the bus crumpled. Students were thrown forward and the bus rolled onto its side. Inside was chaos. Students who'd been sleeping woke up to pain and screaming. Others couldn't move. They were trapped by twisted metal and overturned seats. Those who could move tried helping others, but some students weren't responding. Blood covered the floor. The smell of fuel filled the air. Emergency services arrived. They cut through metal to reach trapped students, pulled bodies from the wreckage. Some students were conscious. Others weren't breathing. Parents rushed to hospitals. Corridors filled with crying families. Doctors worked on student after student. Some survived with injuries. Others didn't make it. Eventually, 9 people died, 5 of whom were students.